I don't know. I just think that there's other options in here, like the 1 and the 4, and the horse that you have second as well, Pine Valley.
Yeah, I don't love this horse, but I'm a little bit worried that this horse could be pretty comfortable on the front end early on in this race, and that was really what it was for me. Just I thought that this one would show some speed and might be one of the main ones to do so, as well as the Class Relief in general. But and again, Digitize, 12th Man, Famous Get, these are all horses that are just better than what he's going to be facing today. Moving on to race number 3. This is one of our off-the-turf races and actually held together fairly well. Only one scratch in here. And the two horses that have really just been knocking heads lately without that kind of rivalry, because we haven't seen a reversal of it, are Grooven and Kunchen Bridge. And we'll take a look at them as they finish with Grooven ahead of his main rival in here. And I would have loved to see some sort of situation where Kunchen Bridge was able to turn the tables on him. We just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, the last few times that we've met, they just haven't been. They've run the same way, basically, around the track. But I think when you look at this race, I think the trip just kind of falls into Grooven's running style in here. When you think about some of the horses that are left in and the pace that may develop in here, and I just think that this horse is somewhat better than the horses that he's facing today. And for me, I just looked at this race as the 11 and the 10. Although I will say, you know, it'll be interesting to see how they bet this race with a horse like Charging in here, who has some form on the dirt that was okay. The maiden race at the fairgrounds, first time out, the non-winners of 2 was not so good.
Right, and we do see a lot of situations where we have these turf races where a lot of that turf form is really mistakenly bet. And so I always view these as really great opportunities in terms of wagering, because the dirt horses aren't always bet the same way they might be if this was a scheduled dirt race, and he's pretty fast. I don't know how well that turf speed is going to translate to this type of situation on the dirt now, but you have to at least figure he's going to be forward.
Yeah, and you have to figure, too, with the race at Saratoga, he got off to a really bad start, so you really don't know what you were going to have, because after that, he kind of just ran near the back of the pack most of the way. So he does have some speed in here. It'll be interesting to see what a horse like Byrne Jakey Byrne does, because on turf, that horse showed some speed last time out, chased on the dirt a little bit as well. So Tivvy's got a little bit of speed as well. We'll see what happens in here if they can knock heads. It's hard to get a pace duel to develop, but we'll see if it happens in here. But I do think the 11 and the 10 are the 2 right horses, and even a bit of the 1 in here as well.
Yeah, Tenebris, do we think he was ever turf intentioned, or do you think that they were hoping for this situation where there's rain and this race ends up coming off?
When I first looked at the race on paper, I thought, well, okay, they're waiting to see if the race comes off. But in all fairness, Faith Wilson's 3 for 19 with 6 seconds and 19 starts off of a trainer change. So maybe this horse does have a look both ways. I know that the sire, obviously Violence was versatile, but now on the dirt, I mean, I think you have to look at this horse as a runner in here and figure. But I still think that a few of these horses are a step or 2 behind the 11 and 10.
I'd agree with that. I think that he is that dirt horse that you want to take a look at in this field, but I think he would have to improve quite a bit to compete with some of those outside contenders. Is there anybody else in here that's worth a mention? I know RB's the Boss has some back dirt races, but I think also would need to take a step forward.
Yeah, I think would need to take a step forward in here, and I think the same can be said for the 12 in here too, Charlie 5-0. I mean,
agree.
You know, this horse likes to be close up. 2 starts back the race at Parks. I know Wired the field. This horse was on the engine from the start and dueling around the track when you watch the race. And then you go back to the last start, and it really wasn't a bad ride. It's just against lesser, and I think even with the step up in here, I know that the race came off the turf, but the race held together with some decent horses in here.
Exactly. I think just facing lesser company last time, but did run well. So not for me, but I understand if there's an argument to be made for that one. Moving on to the 4th race, we have $40,000 claimers sprinting on the dirt. And we have another rematch of Cup and High Strike, who we'll take a look at in their last start, with Cup being able to prevail over that one. This was 2 starts ago for Cup. He then ran a pretty solid 3rd, I thought, versus Tougher for a $50,000 claiming tag. And this is a horse that had some trouble in Saratoga. He kind of had that awkward start. He was facing some pretty good drop-down company in there. And then really off the claim, I thought ran very well in this start and showed that he could be quite a bit more tactical than we had seen from him necessarily in the past.
Yeah, he's definitely more tactical. And in the race that we're seeing here, I thought that Luis Rivera Jr. gave this horse an excellent ride. It was smart too after the stumble. Didn't really rush him.
Right,
Just
very
let him
patient.
settle. And I like that about him. And sometimes it's a lot easier to be the passenger rather than the pilot when you're sitting on the back of a horse. So didn't rush him, didn't put him in a bad spot. And this horse has really come into his own. Last time out, I feel like the dynamic just wasn't right for the horse as well. I think he wants a little bit of a target to shoot after, and I think today from that inside post, can get some positional speed in here and be right there when the running really starts. So I ended up scratching into this horse on top. Full disclosure, I did have the 8 right up on top. So I scratch into this horse, but it's a scratch into that I really don't mind in here.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with what you're saying, that it was a very patient, well thought out ride for this horse last time. And even with the way that the pace ended up setting up last time, I mean, Thunderian is in very good form. He's one of the more consistent Jacobson horses of the ones that we do see. So I don't mind that race when he finished third as well. Also improved a little bit in terms of his Beyer speed figure. Joking Way is a horse that's probably going to take some money in here, especially with the scratches of our 2 outside runners. And he's one that I wasn't in love with the race that he ran last time, but he was able to get the win. I was kind of originally trying to beat him, but now I end up picking him 4th.
It's funny, I literally wrote, wasn't the best win.
It was not the best
It was
win.
not the best win. I don't think it was the greatest field either, but we've seen Linda do that before too, where she'll drop horses down, she'll get the win.
Right.
They'll run well. They ended up getting claimed out of that race. And now, I mean, you look at the races that the horse came out of when the horse ran at Churchill Downs and Ellis, they weren't terrible races. This horse is tactical enough. This may be the right level for this horse against a group like this in here. I just don't know, first off, the trainer change with a barn that's struggling, how well they're going to run in here
And
today.
claiming away from Linda Rice, regardless of where you're going, it isn't always a positive move because she just spots her horses so well and does such a great job. With the number 4 Street Swag, this is a horse that is getting a little bit of class relief, and while I didn't particularly love, I found an interesting stat from Mike Maselli that he has some really good numbers taking the blinkers off of his horses. He's 21%, $2.23 ROI over the past 5 years, so I thought that maybe this one would be able to perhaps relax a little bit with that equipment change and has had a little bit of trouble getting out of the gate, so perhaps this can help him break a bit sharper.
Yeah, I think settling this horse down is probably the best thing that can be done. And also, I think getting a clean trip more towards the inside and not being outside. This horse has been wide a couple of times as well. And in a race where if you really liked horses like President Z and Ride Up that were going to be a little bit of prices, I think Street Swag is probably now going to end up being that 4th choice that you
I
want
would
on the
agree.
board.
All right, excellent. Moving on to the 5th race, which does stay on the turf. An interesting maiden event for our New York bred 2-year-old fillies. And this one has been moved to the outer. And I think the conversation just really does revolve so much around Naughty Destiny, if this is a horse that you rely on heavily or one that you want to try to beat, because this horse was not bet at all first time out and really ran very well within the context of this race on debut. And this is a sire, Destin, who really does not have a ton of debut success or turf routing success. This horse ran well.
Yeah, it was interesting because, as you said, the horse didn't take much money, which sometimes the Christophe horses take money if they're ready to go. And this horse had a wide post, and it was a slow pace and really ran well, gained a lot of ground in there late, moves inside today. And I just kind of felt when I looked at the rest of the race that I thought Christophe was 1-2 in here. And if you want the horse that, and I also tend to, at this time of the year, I usually tend to go to horses that have a little bit more experience, especially over this course. Things start to get a little quirky around here sometimes because the weather does cool off. It was a little chilly this morning.
It's freezing.
Yeah, it was in the 30s. So sometimes you'll get to see some quirky results in here. You'll start to see some inside runners on the turf course do well. They'll get better setups in here. So for me, I'm just going to take a shot in here with Naughty Destiny. I know this horse is probably going to end up being the favorite in here. So we'll see what happens. But I think there's a few other interesting horses in here and interesting firsters you could make a case for. And even a horse, a second-time starter, or actually a third-time starter on turf, I should say, that you have on top.
Yeah, Bossy Jeans is one that I think she was stranded on an also eligible list a couple days ago that I had some interest in because she ran pretty well in her last start to be very forward in there. That was the race that Awesome Check won. She was a huge price that day. She was 47-1, and she was a part of a pace with a couple of other long shots that did really end up fading within that race, and I thought she held on pretty well, and we'll see 3 out of the 4 top finishers run back a little bit later on today's card, as well as a horse that Naughty Destiny was facing in Dividend Recap in the finale today. So this race will be a good indicator of those horses later on, but I just thought that this is one that is now really built up that foundation, showed improvement last time out, and she did not have to stay on as well as she did as the pace was coming apart in that start on September 15th there. So I liked her quite a bit, and I thought she would be at least a fair price in here, with a lot of that money gravitating towards Naughty Destiny, as well as Miss City Girl, who is the full to City Man.
Yeah, and it's a cool pedigree there. For what it's worth, Christophe is 8 for 35 with a 426 ROI with fillies on the turf routing at NYRA the last 5 years, 18 of them in the money. So I thought
It's
that
a good
was,
move.
yeah, it's a good move. It's a good stat. I think he knows what he's doing a little bit.
Just a little.
Yeah. The only thing I learned about Christophe is don't stand in his spot when we're at Belmont Park watching replays.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So he was nice about it, but I was like,
Boot you out of there?
I'm like, am I in your way? And he's like, no, you're good. I'm like, I think I'm just going to take one step left over there. But yeah, no, this horse is definitely an interesting horse, the full to City Man in here. The works have been good. I found it interesting, too, that the horse had a few works down at Presque Isle as well. Early on in the card, prior
Yes.
to all the,
Yeah.
getting over here. And I guess, we talk a little bit about Chad's horse in here too.
Yeah, no layups. I didn't love this pedigree so much, a preservationist, a newer sire, and there's not a ton to go on in terms of this one being overly turf meant, but he's always so dangerous in these types of situations. This is a horse that seems to be working fairly well. Jose Lascano getting some opportunities for Chad Brown, with a lot of our main riders out at Santa Anita, of course, for the Breeders' Cup. So I think it would be a little remiss to discount this one in a spot like this, but I thought that there was a little bit more intrigue perhaps going on outside of this one. And I mean, there's some other horses that have experience in here. Calling an Audible did not run that badly first time out either. There was no one else that I necessarily needed to use, but I think that this is a fun and interesting race, and it's nice to have these full fields on the turf.
Yeah, and Blinker's on the 11. She takes the cash. Had a little bit of an interesting look, too. I mean, if you want to take a look at a second-time starter for David Duggan, I know the numbers don't really, reflect for second-time starters for David, but the Blinkers move on does, and maybe this horse will show a little bit more speed from an outside post today, and if this horse can kind of get over a little bit and be forwardly placed, might make a difference on a course like this. So a lot of interesting things in the fifth race. I'm glad it stood on the turf, and I'm glad it stood together, because there's some interesting firsters and some horses that have run in here already.
I agree. She takes cash, one that did break slowly first time out, so perhaps one to watch with that equipment change. And we'll take a quick break after our first 5 and come right back.
For almost 150 years, the Saratoga name has been synonymous with the finest quality, sustainably sourced spring water available anywhere. Saratoga carries on the rich tradition of its forefathers by crafting each stunning blue glass bottle with the same attention to detail and care that has been its hallmark for generations. Visit SaratogaSpringwater.com today, or ask for us by name at your local market or restaurant. Saratoga Spring Water. Make every day exquisite.
Welcome back to Thursday Talking Horses. Sarah Albadwi with Paul Verderosa, and we get started in our 6th race here, a late pick 4 going on, and we have some maiden claimers for $20,000. We're sprinting on the dirt, and this is a race where you have a couple of drop-down types, and as well as a very interesting first-time starter for Chad Brown that originally sold for quite a high purchase price and is now debuting as a 4-year-old gelding, and that is Swing District, a horse that I think will take quite a bit of money that I just didn't really want to be bothered with, but I saw that you picked second.
I ended up putting this horse second in here, and it was almost by default. I really should have actually put your top pick a little bit higher, but I ended up using Swing District. And for what it's worth with Chad, before he gets to the other horses, he's 1 for 9 with maiden claimer first-time sprinters at NYRA the past 5 years, 2 in the money. You know what his only winner was?
Who?
Customer Experience.
Really?
Yeah, Customer Experience. Ran for $75,000.
Cool.
So I got the job done. I was just, the dam was a lower level claimer. The last work, I guess, was good over at Monmouth when you look at the context of everything that went on. But as you said, they paid up for it. It's been a while. The horse is in now for 20. I mean, against this group, this horse could win in here, but there's other alternatives, I think, that looked more appeasing.
Right,
than
this horse
first-time
could
starter
win
in
for
here.
fun, but I mean, you're looking at a horse that originally sold for $105,000 as a yearling. This is a dam without much pedigree going on. They breed her to Constitution. He cost over $100,000. So now you have a 4-year-old gelding that's debuting for a $20,000 tag. So they've had this horse for a long time, and clearly something has happened to prevent him from getting to the racetrack up until this point, as he's now almost a 5-year-old. So this horse could win without me. I just didn't really want to use this one at a short price with all those things that I saw as negatives. But another horse that has a bit of a negative against him is Frisky Jim, your number 8 here, who is making his second start. And we'll take a look at his debut, where he finished a pretty good second to Talkin' Pharaoh, a horse that has come back and improved quite a bit. And while he did break a bit slowly in that race, he got himself up to second by the time they were headed into the turn. And then since then, we haven't seen him. He was subsequently avoided claim for the $40,000 tag, and now we see him dropping in for the $20,000 tag. So he's not very trustworthy either.
No, he's another horse that can win in here. I just don't trust the drop. Wesley has okay numbers doing this, but the claim was voided. The horse has been off since May. I just didn't know what to do. This horse may pop out of the gate and end up, dueling in front or being in front, or might run 5th in here today. And I just really was not a fan of this horse coming back and dropping in class in here.
Right. I think that these are some fairly questionable short prices, and they could both win. I don't have a major knock against Frisky Jim as I do with your first-time starter Swing District, but I went to a horse that there is a positive trainer stat here, and that's the number 6, Magic City, who is one that's just making his 3rd start overall. And we saw trainer Linda Rice go and claim a lot of horses out of that Kentucky circuit and have so much success with them over at Saratoga, and this is one of the horses that she claimed that then we have not seen through Saratoga. So he's had quite a bit of time off, and again, claimed for $50,000, now dropping for the $20,000 tag. It's not a move that you love to see, but at the same time, overall, with what she's been able to do, if one doesn't work out the way that she thought it might, that's okay. So this horse could just end up being spotted in a place where he could be successful. So for her, when you have a horse's first off the claim with a 50% drop in claiming tag, she's 15 for 31 over the past 5 years. That's 48%, $2.67 ROI. Within dirt sprints, she's 9 for 17, so 53%, $2.79 ROI over the past 5 years. So this is a situation where she excels. He comes out of a race where 2 horses lost their rider. Everybody ended up being okay, but just kind of a chaotic event versus tougher company. And just with those numbers, I thought that he was very interesting.
And it's funny, being the stat geek that I am too, I broke it down further than you. And when you break down your 9 for 17, 6 for 17 of them were maiden claimers, sprinting first off the claim at Naira. So that's why I think I kind of shortchanged the horse a little bit by putting the horse as my proverbial 5th pick, the always dreaded 5th pick, that I'll put the horse in the winner's circle. I just landed on Little Skippy just because I felt like the first dirt start, 2 starts back off the turf, I didn't think was a bad effort. The horse was decent. It was close up. The 2 horses that ran 1, 2 in there, they're okay horses. They're not great horses. They're okay horses. They've held their own.
They're kind of turf horses, but they are okay.
Yeah, they're okay just in the body of being okay. And the horse ran well despite being wide for a bit as well. Comes in off the layoff last time out, got involved in a quicker pace and gave in late, kind of expected that off the layoff. Now drops a little bit today. Maybe Katie puts this horse out there on the engine from the inside post, maybe sits a little bit off of a horse, see what When Love Takes Over does, or maybe what Frisky Jim does. And I just thought in a race where there were question marks, where the firster wasn't crazy about with Todd, you've got Frisky Jim, Magic City coming off the layoff. I figured maybe I'll give Little Skippy a chance at a price second off the break and see what happens.
He makes sense. I think that he could definitely take a step forward off of that last race. When Love Takes Over, what is he going to do? Because he's a horse that has speed to possibly be in front here with the blinkers coming off, but he's one that's also been rated a little bit off the pace in his last couple of starts. So I wonder now, with the rider change to Luis Rivera Jr., getting some of that weight break, if they're going to be more aggressive with him, especially from the inside, and with him perhaps not getting quite as keen with those blinkers coming off. But I also fear that he's really taken a step backwards.
Yeah, I wasn't crazy about his last race. I know that they say he got bumped at the break. It wasn't terrible. And then he just really didn't do much running after he packed it in around the half. So I kind of just I really didn't care for that last race. And now dropping down again in half and taking the blinkers off. We'll see what happens from the inside, though. He might be a pace factor, though.
That's a fair point. All right. Well, moving on to another race that we have taken off the turf. That's race number 7. There isn't much dirt form to go on in here, and we do have 5 still contesting this race. But taking a look at this field where we have a horse that I think, to me at least, has the most dirt form and makes the most sense, and that's the number 7, Good Rapport.
Yeah, it goes first off the claim now for Rudy, who has good numbers with that. The barn's been going well for him. And when you look at what's left in this race after scratches, there's just not much going on. There's not much form going on. And I would have to believe that this horse should be in front and in front comfortably and should be able to go at his own pace and should be able to take them wire to wire.
And he might just be the best horse that's left in this race
Yeah.
because there's just no real dirt form to go on or form in general. And I mean, Rudy Rodriguez, first off the claim dirt routes, he's 20%, so it's not like they're falling off when he comes to his barn, even though they are stepping up in class. His race 2 back wasn't even that bad behind Gut Feeling and Mama's Gold. So I just didn't really see much reason to go against him. Is there anybody else in here that's worth a mention or that you'd want to use as some sort of backup?
I know he's a little bit slow. I actually end up with Blame D Rulemaker second just because of the drop. And we'll have a little bit of position down on the inside, so I figured maybe he'll just be sitting second. I mean, the dirt races, you got to go back. I mean, he ran a race here last year. I know it was slow, but it was still second in the slop, and then has a race to go back to before that at Monmouth. But again, they're slow races as compared to what Good Report has. So I just think really it was Good Report and everybody else.
And that's it. All right. There we go. Moving on to race number 8 here. This is our feature today, a nice allowance race with a lot of horses returning off of a pretty significant layoff. And we can take a look at 3 of them. We have to hop in the time machine and go all the way back to January 6th of this year. But we'll take a look at Bourbon Calling, Win It, and I Am the Law on a day that Bourbon Calling was able to get the victory. When it's a horse towards the outside that's going to take quite a bit of money, he has the talent, he comes back as a gelding for the Kimmel Barn. Can he finally get out of the gate and get himself into some of these races?
I think the gelding aspect was an attempt to try and help this horse. He's a tough horse to ride. I mean, we know that. And he has races that put him squarely in the mix. The layoff concerns me because John Kimmel doesn't have great numbers coming off of layoffs. Usually his horses need a race to get back to their best running. And a horse like Win It usually tends to force those riders to make that first move or that quick move. Don't get me wrong, I lost my top pick in here, so that's how I ended up on my goofy horse on the rail. But he can definitely win in here, but you've got horses that are coming off of layoffs like I Am the Law and Win It, and a horse like Full Screen who ran a ridiculous number last time out that I'm not sure I trust in the context of everything that went on in that race. So when Adero came out, it ended up a long shot for me. Bourbon Calling, who we saw also in the replay, ran huge there. Subsequently, he's run into a couple of tough fields and a couple of tough horses, but he's always been just not running, I think, the way he should be running either. He's further back than he should be in some of these races and not up close. I don't know. There's a lot of questions in this race, and I landed on a pair of long shots in here. But make no mistake about it, horses like Win It and I Am the Law and Bourbon Calling, they can certainly win with their best races if they show up.
Right. It's just kind of a question of, are we going to get those races from them? And you mentioned the numbers for John Kimmel. I mean, he is 0 for 23 on dirt off 180-day layoffs with 8 to hit the board. So I don't want to take this horse at a short price. I want him next time when he's had a race to get that fitness underneath him versus I Am the Law, who is also coming off a similar layoff. John Terranova off 180 plus days. Well, he's 10 for 29 on dirt, so 34%, $3.58 ROI over the past 5 years. So you're looking at 2 different types of situations with these barns, and it's not that anybody's necessarily more capable or talented than the other. It's just how those horses come back to their races. So Bourbon Calling, he has the recency, but just as you mentioned, his last couple of races, I don't know that I trust him either in here. So before I end up talking about my crazy long shot, why don't you tell me about No Salt?
So No Salt's got back races that make him competitive here. I mean, the effort wasn't bad going 1.5 miles 2 starts back when you consider it was the distance and probably didn't want to go that far. And when you look at 4 starts back for this horse, Indian Buzz, Brasstown, They've come back to win races. I would think he's going to be close up in here. We'll see what happens. He does have some back races, as I said, and he ran a really good race here back on March of last year. I know it was over a good track, and it was the Dad's Caps when we did have those, you know, the Claiming Crown days, stuff like that. But, I mean, Scott Volk has done well with this horse when he had him prior. We'll see what happens in here. I like the inside post for this horse. I think if the horse could break a little bit, Isaac Castillo would be a little bit aggressive going the mile in here. I like this horse at a price today over another price in Synthesis because I think we kind of agree and we see the race in the same way that we kind of like long shots in here in races. Yeah, in a race where there's just a lot of questions. But a horse like No Salt for me who's run well over this track before, and he's 5 for 8 in the top 3 here in his lifetime with 3 wins in those 8 starts. He's just appealing at a huge price. And I know he's got to turn it around from his last start, but last time he was in over his head against that field that he faced. So I think that this is the right spot for him with a lot of question marks with some of the main players in here.
Yeah, I don't particularly like him, but we don't particularly like the favorites. So if you have some sort of alternative at a price, all for it. With Castle Chaos, for me, this is a horse that is one that I don't necessarily fully trust at the mile. I think that he might be a better sprinter, but at the same time, he's been totally out of position in his last 2 races, very, very far back in both of those sprint races, especially last time. He spotted that field several lengths where he ended up finishing a solid 3rd behind Durante, who we just saw win the Grade 3 Bold Ruler, as well as Vittorio, who, while he didn't run back that well at Keeneland, he at least had some pace issues to deal with and was making that equipment change and didn't really regress significantly from his Beyer speed figure. So he's been facing quality sprinters. At a mile, the last time that he tried it, he was really up close to that pace and he was very keen inside. So I don't know what kind of trip is best for him, but just with the amount of ground that he's shown that he is able to make up in some of those sprint races, the company that he's been keeping, and as well as the price that he's going to be, I thought that he was worth a shot in here when I just didn't love the shorter priced horses.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's run good races, and he's run good races here. The mile might be pushing it a little bit with him, but I think he had circumstances against him when Adaro beat him at Monmouth that day as well. He was up close to that pace. I know it doesn't look fast, but it kind of blew up a little bit in there. And the race that he lost to Southern District in here in the mud that day, I feel like he just kind of, he was wide that day, and I just feel like he just didn't kick on with it the way he could have. So I think he makes some sense in here if you think that he's going to get a trip from the outside post to be a little bit more forwardly placed. And I like Synthesis. I think Synthesis is a cool horse, the 3 for David Jacobson. I actually picked him the day that he ran against Gunnett that day.
Oh.
So yeah. So I think that he's a neat horse. And I think that the stretch out is fine with him because he's won before, you know, going longer, ran good races going long. So we've seen this with David. Sometimes there's no rhyme or reason. They come back from Laurel. They run well. You know, and he's done okay here. So in a race with a lot of question marks, you know, we're looking at some prices in here. So nothing ever wrong with that, especially if Win It does not come back and run well off the break on the win end. And a horse like I Am the Law, who has the races going longer, you know, that have been good. You have to go back and form a little bit to find those mile races that have been solid on the dirt.
Right,
So.
exactly. Just a trainer difference in that. And Synthesis, I definitely don't mind him stretching back out in distance. So fun allowance feature that we have today and some very interesting alternatives to those shorter prices. But to close things out, another race that thankfully does stay on the turf in here. And as those horses that we mentioned earlier on that had faced some of our rivals in that other race that we talked about, now we see a lot of those common horses now facing each other in here. And we'll take a look at quickly Boxed Wine, Run for Your Honey, and a little bit Naughty, 3 that come back from that 9:15 start because they were all running in behind Awesome Check, and Bossy Jeans does come out of that race as well. I actually thought that they all ran fairly well, but I'd give the advantage now to a little bit Naughty, who was so wide as she was post 12 and did make up more ground than her other 2 rivals in there. I just felt that Boxed Wine had such a perfect trip from the inside in this race and is now going to get that outside 12 post.
I agree, 100%. And this horse, you know, for me, it was a little bit Naughty with the big post relief and should improve second time out. You know, was wide in here, was gaining, and Boxed Wine really had the run of the race coming up the inside. I know the race came apart a little bit for the horses to make their moves, but to me, if you wanted horses out of that race, I think that you probably wanted a little bit Naughty out of that race as opposed to Boxed Wine. And I mean, even a horse like Run for Your Honey, the 8 in here, when you go back 3 starts to the race at Saratoga, you look at that field from that day, and I mean, was on the pace that day, kind of got rushed up a little bit into that pace, and I think that horse would make a little bit more sense, even more than boxed line as well. So, but I think we saw the race a little bit the same with the 5s and the 1s. I mean, I just have the 2 split in them.
Dividend Recap is just a horse that finished a very narrow second to Red Burgundy, a race that we showed earlier with Naughty Destiny checking in third there. It's like she basically won. I mean, she was really making up ground at the end and ran a very solid race. And there, I didn't see a huge reason to pick against her. We see the same things with a little bit Naughty. You like Fast and Frisky a little bit. What did you see with this one?
I was thinking that hopefully, I know Jorge Abreu has good numbers, with the 2-year-olds and second time out on the grass and all. I was just hoping that this horse shows a little bit more speed from that inside post, especially if from the 2 pole, because if a little bit Naughty doesn't break that well, maybe this horse can get some inside post on a rail. And with these courses, it's got a little cooler out. We'll see how it plays. The rails are out. This race stood on the inner, right? Or you stood on the inner. So if the rails are out a little bit on the course, maybe this horse can sit a little bit of a trip. Last time out came a little, tipped off wide late to get out in the stretch and didn't do that much running. I'm hoping second time on the grass does find a little bit of improvement in here at a price. But I think the 5 is really...
She's going to be awfully tough in here.
Yeah, she's going to be awfully tough in here if she runs. She just deserves one more shot. I know she's going to be a short price, but she deserves one more shot in here.
Precisely. All right, well, that'll do it for us for our 9-race card today. Make sure that you are going to play all of our races over at NYRA Bets. We have our $25 free bet, $200 sign-up bonus with our promo code CUP25. Head on over to nyrabets.com. Make sure you get signed up over there. We also have our 25% Breeders' Cup deposit bonus. Get ready for the Breeders' Cup. Get up to $100 back. Opt in over at nyrabets.com where you can play all of the action. And that also includes our middle pick 4 that we always have going on today in the Aqueduct Blue now. Get a part of that action and be sure to tune into the show, which starts very shortly, coming up at 12 p.m. So just 9 minutes away, and we end at 4:30 today over on FS2. Paul, this was fun.
It was fun.
Glad we got to reunite after our Belmont after day, and this was a lot more relaxed than that
Yeah, a lot more chill, a
situation.
lot more relaxed, and we're nice enough to finish the show before they start on Fox.
I know. How nice of us.
Yeah, right.
All right. Thank you for tuning in. Have a great day, everybody, and good luck.
Almost 150 years, the Saratoga name has been synonymous with the finest quality, sustainably sourced spring water available anywhere. Saratoga carries on the rich tradition of its forefathers by crafting each stunning blue glass bottle with the same attention to detail and care that has been its hallmark for generations. Visit SaratogaSpringwater.com today or ask for us by name at your local market or restaurant. Saratoga Spring Water. Make every day exquisite.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Aqueduct. The track is fast, the turf is good. Races 5 and 9 to be run on the turf course. Turf rated good. Here are today's scratches and changes. Race 1 is clear. No changes in today's first. Race 2 is clear. No changes. Race 3 is the start of the middle pick 4. Race taken off the turf will be run at 6 furlongs on the main track. Race was originally scheduled for the turf, taken off the turf, run at 6 furlongs on the dirt. Scratch the 3, Volkert. The 4, make the jockey Eric Hensel. The 5 is +1. Rider change on the 8, make it Ruben Silvera. Race 4, start of the pick 6. The 5 is +1. Scratch the 7, President Z. Scratch the 8, Ride Up. Race 5, start of the late pick 5. Stays on the turf, will be run on the outer turf. Scratch the 13, Practical Royalty. Scratch the 14, Call Her Bluff. Race 6 is clear. Race 7, race taken off the turf, run at 1 mile on the dirt. Scratch the 1, Embote. Scratch the 1A, Zapruder. Scratch the 4, Billy's Got Issues. Scratch the 5, Into It. Scratch the 6, internal capital.